This is a this is really a vast subject, but it is important because how much honor and respect I have for a young man named Max Spiers who was in a super soldier program, and I always give a thank you and gratitude to Miles Johnson, who in my experiences since I was a little boy. I don't know of a single unit of energy that represents consciousness that spent his consciousness energy, which is time and energy. And of course, time and energy in this matrix is defined as money, electronic numbers. Is Miles Johnson because he was a former BBC journalist, right? But I don't know of a single being, a single unit of consciousness that spent more of his time and energy presenting to others, to the world stage, Shakespeare's stage, right? More of a cross section. Now we're back into cross section when it comes to libraries, circulation libraries, and a morphogenetic field structure of a motherboard, right? I don't know a single person who presented more information, visual, mathematical, and geometrical map reading information that we experience in our mirror than Miles Johnson, because he presented an enormous amount of visual information data that came from a whole cross-section of folks that came out of all sorts of things, which means if you want to experience others who've experienced what they experience, that we can learn from what we experience through what they communicate to us as a result of what they experienced from what they learned, who they are by virtue of those experiences, that they're sharing those experiences with us, we learn from through them. Because there isn't any separation, okay? When you know that it began with eternal, unconditional love, that's the eternal spirit of fire. So there is eternity, and then there's something that is less than eternity. And the only reason we experience something that is less than eternity is experiencing something less than speed. And that's how that relates to time, density, and dimension. It's the speed, the accelerator. The highest accelerator is an eternal sun, because that means that it's gifting electrons at the highest rate of speed through sound and light, burn patterns. So the burn patterns become the map. That's the map read. So your map reading, your stargates, the universal and galactic temple that exists within your what? Your template. How are you going to be able to get to another star system, another galaxy, if you don't have a map built in on how to translocate and get there? Right? It isn't like somebody's going to hand you a map and go, well, here's a map on how to get to Lyra. Here, now I can see where the map is, right? The grid map. Hey, there's Lyra. Up there you see a big disc. Well, how do I get there? Right? It's built in. Now we're into gates, control of gates, key codes, and access codes that open the gate for your consciousness energy to be able to translocate there with your Merkaba vehicle, the light spirit body, with your soul arcing, right? So when you're a one, right, you experience being one with all creation, and you're on fire, you're experiencing the eternal spirit of fire, you're everywhere. You're everywhere at once, right? And that's why it was sort of funny when I try and relate to others what it's like for me to share with you what it is that I experience by being one, which means my energy is in everything. So therefore, I have an access code and a key code to experience everything, right? So everything that you are, I am. So that's why I used to play around and go, you want to be a tree for a day? Remember, the teacher would ask me when I was a kid growing up, what do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? How much time do you got? Well, it goes on forever. Okay, so you want to use your consciousness to experience this vehicle? You want to run this software program? You want to run this software program? You want to be a dog for a week? You want to be a cat for a month? You want to be a dolphin? You want to experience being a dolphin? Okay, then go run a dolphin. Go be a dolphin for a week. Run that software, right? So you realize that's the mathematical geographical information that represents the instruction sets of what to assemble, build, and experience by the consciousness that is running the vehicle. Right? You want to go swim in the ocean for the next 20 years? You see how the form and flow of the dolphin's energy curves, right? Curved space waves, radio waves, right? That's how that dolphin came and saved my butt one day. I was out all by myself on the North Shore of Kauai, home base, right? That's my home base. Home base is that rock, Kauai. I call that a goddess's flower shop. Because as soon as I grab my feet to that rock, when I get on that rock, oh man, I can feel Mama's Ensign bigger than you know what. Okay? Kauai is a very, very special place. I cry almost every time I think about what it's like to be there, and I'm there when I do that. Because I'm experiencing the visual, geometrical, mathematical information that represents what we see holographically in our projector. Even though I'm looking at a different projector like that, right? But you got another projector running, right? It's experiencing all kinds of visual, geometrical information, mathematics, right? So you're experiencing the map, other maps, other places that your energy is experiencing, besides this one, besides what's in that mirror. So we're mirrors, gates, the mirror in the sky. So this was sort of in response to a link that Karen put up related to Max Spiers and an interview, and Max exposed, what it means to expose the film, the biofilm, right? The biofilm strip, how sound compression and expansion of consciousness work, right? As a capacitor, the capacity to experience what? Sound compress the movie and then uncoil it and experience it over time space, right? So now you're back in to the past, the present, and the future when you realize that there's only right now, which means there's only a single point from which it all began. So when you're experiencing eternity through your own heart and your soul arcing consciousness, right, which is the essence of our spirit, experiencing who we are in energy, the energy that we're experiencing is what love is. So that's the single point of origin, right? The point from which it all began. See, just like you take a pencil with a sharp edge on it, sharp point, you got a blank sheet of paper, right? Close your eyes. Try that sometime. Close your eyes, right? And put your right hand, or if you're left-handed, put that pencil point down there using your fingers, right, and your thumb, and then start drawing freehand. And allow your imagination, see? And I'm doing that right now, and you would see my left hand turning clockwise. Right? Now you can go in either direction, right? Clockwise, counterclockwise. Those are clocks built into the DNA. So I remember, when was it, about a week ago, Mama, when I was looking at some of the Voyager stuff, when we talked about syncing, synchronicity, synchronized clocks, right? So now you're into clock cycles. Now we're into atmospherics, atoms that cycle, water worlds, right? DNA born out of water, right? And so we're experiencing the water worlds, right? Because we're mostly water. And why water? Right? And that's related to density and sound. The actual spin rotation of sound and light, which is a burn pattern. Because the eternal spirit of fire is on fire to create worlds born out of what love is. Because that's what we are. That's the energy that we use. Right? So start with that single point, close your eyes, and then just notice. You can look at it afterward. Do it for a minute, do it for 30 seconds, do it for 5 minutes, larger piece of paper. And then look at what you did. Just using your imagination. On default, which means you're not being distracted by anything. So your focus, the intention of your energy, the focus of your camera eye, the third eye, right? Your astral projector. And just start drawing. Right? And then open your eyes and see what you did, what you created. The form and flow of spiritual energy is now map reading what you created. Maps, star maps, right? Universal and galactic star maps that allows us to be able to get there because the directions, right? The gyroscope is built in with a vertical and a horizontal stabilizer. So when you have the single point that is in perfect balance, which is the weight, which is the density of the consciousness, that is at the center point of the first sphere, the first sphere of eternal light is the first eternal spirit of fire. And that eternal spirit of fire does what? Purifies dirty electricity. Dirty electricity. So that you're cleansed. You're purged. You're purging that which we get exposed to. So you realize that the eternal spirit of fire is a cleanser. We're cleansing our cells, our cell membranes, right? So all the units of consciousness that exist within the all creation are experiencing being one with all creation because they're experiencing the purity of that light, which is the purity of the eternal spirit of fire that cleanses that light. Now you're experiencing what is known as a pure heart. The pure heart of an atom seed, the crystal atom seed. That's like experiencing God's heart and soul. It goes on forever, gifting us sound and light, burn patterns, right? So the reason that I had started this actually related to something that was said on that video talking about Max Spiers, okay, about something that Max talked about, amnesic barriers. So an easy way to sort of translate this or share this, communicate this with others, because when I grew up as a kid with what were known as vinyl records, right? And you'd put them on a flat disc, a record player, right? And then you had what were known as 45s, like 45 degrees. You know, the importance of a 45-degree angle, right? So you got a circle that's rotating on a horizontal flat plane, right? And then you had what was known as the needle. And I remember as a kid growing up, the phonograph that I had, phono, PH, onograph, graphing the sound and light burn patterns on a vinyl disc, like a silicon disc, crystalline disc, right? Hydrocarbons, programming, matter, programmable radio waves, programmable frequencies into the DNA, right? Running a radio set, putting together a radio set, you know, high bandwidth, which is higher perception, which is higher states of consciousness, because you're loaded. Just like if you load, right, the crystal frequencies into the radio set, now you're running those frequencies. That's your radio set. So when you're running a cosmic level spirit, you're experiencing the eternal spirit of fire, right, in your radio set, in your DNA assembly, the software, right? And so what I'm reminded of with the 45 degrees, right, 45 degrees, right? Degrees, latitude and longitude. Now we're back to the vertical and the horizontal stabilizers. Vectored space, right? And so Max talked about amnesic barriers. So another way you can think of those records, when I was growing up as a kid, we had what was called a broken record. And what is a broken record? That's a broken arrow. Because it would do what we call skip, right? Which means it kept recording the same thing over and over and over again. So you were not experiencing the next sound. Instead, you kept experiencing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. You're not experiencing a different result. That's a broken record, which is a broken arrow, which is a broken gyrodome. Why? Because they're not in balance. The polarities are not in balance. So you can see why they were generating 45s, like back during the 1950s with Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, right? Folks like that. This was all carefully choreographed. That's what they do. They're architects, right? Mistakes of the past get repeated, if you will. That's a broken record. doing the same thing over again, expecting a different result, which means we don't remember the past mistakes as a result of the development of technology, repeating patterns of behavior because they forgot what happened in Atlantis. Okay, the temples in Atlantis. And so the reason that we can cross-translate this by what we cross-index and what we hold in memory and why we hold in memory now what we share in the future. Because it's got value. Why does it have value? So we don't keep repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. Because we remember. And the reason we remember is because we're choosing to hold it in memory and share with others. But what they do with that visual, mathematical, geometrical map reading information is going to be up to their map reader. The consciousness that is map reading the math and geometry that is being shared with others on the visible light spectrum. So Mac talked about an amnesic barrier, right? So when a soul that's fully intact, experiencing being the one, gets traumatized, a fractal, loses a fractal of light. Okay, it's losing light. Now it becomes aware it's losing energy. So imagine that you're the one, you're experiencing eternity, and now you're experiencing a loss of yourself as a result of what you're experiencing in your mirror of what you were once giving love to. It's gone. Now you're experiencing less love in others by virtue of what's been experienced by others, that our antenna, because we're so hypersensitive, we become aware of a loss of us, ourselves, of everything that we're giving eternal love to. Now we're back to what I do to you, I do to me. Right? So you realize, because I realized this as a child, that I'm losing at a particular rate of accelerated speed more of what I'm giving love to, which means I'm losing more of what I am as a result of what they are, that I'm experiencing in me as a result of what they do with their energy, that is going back. That's called devolution, not evolution, right? Which means the consciousness is being reduced, like a reducer, right? So it's not experiencing a greater capacity to experience more love, but to experience more living light, to experience a living magnet. So when you're experiencing less love in us as a result of what others do in their mirror, then we're experiencing a mirror that keeps losing light. Now I become aware of something that is not running a living magnet. Now I'm experiencing a dead magnet. And that's why they use the words like artificial light. It went dead. That light is no longer experiencing living light of living consciousness, which is a living magnet, is experiencing what love is. It's no longer experiencing what love is. But it's still aware of itself. It's aware of the energy that it is. But the energy that it is a black hole. So the only way that it can continue to maintain what it's aware of in energy is to get energy from something else, which means it's not self-generating as an accelerator. So now you realize it's an inverter. That's right. Its consciousness is an inverted triangle. That's simple enough. So now you can translate that through an amnesic barrier. You can translate that with what happened over in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. When approximately, if that number is correct, 50% of 100%, or 50% of those units of consciousness that were wearing a military uniform that went over there are now dead. They passed away. And why is that? Because they couldn't live with their record anymore. Because the record was broken. You know, back to the 45, skipping. It's looping, it's time looping. It's experiencing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. Now what's happening is they can't shut the motor off. The motor keeps running the horror, the visual images. They can't get rid of it. They can't delete it. They can't erase it. And it drives them insane. Right? So now you get into drug addiction, of what we're held captive to as a result of what? Trauma. Now you can tie phosphorus, or the phosphorus ignition, which is an orgasm, which is a lot of heat, that delivers the seed, that delivers the visual information packets on what the girl is to build. Now that information is in her lab, right, that is available to her to create a vehicle, a software vehicle that a soul and a spirit that's coming through her can now experience when you come out of the womb. From the flashpoint, a flashpoint drive motor tetraeden, right, when conception takes place, right? So now when the soul consciousness imprinted into that software is now running that vehicle. So you can see what happens with forced breeding experiments, right? Which is information transfer, which is instruction set transfer, which is based on the mathematical programming of that particular assembly, which is the vehicle, which is the software. So now you're into genetic engineering and genetic consciousness that knows how to engineer, or if you will, build an assembly. Just like building a car. You know, you're a designer, an architect, right? You want to come up with a concept car, right? So you got your visual information, right, on what it looks like. That means your energy already energized it. It's already there. It's already been manifested in your own mind. So now what happens is you take something that's already been generated, that's in your visual information mind, your mathematical geometrical map read of what you just experienced. And so what you need to do in order to be able to drive it in a physical way on this planet, it means that you've got to take the energy, self-organized energy, and say, okay, well, I'm going to build this vehicle like a tricycle. Or how about a pogo stick? It could be anything that you can imagine, right? But it takes time and it takes energy, right? So in an energy harvesting system, it means that you need to acquire the electrons as the basis and the form in which you're going to use that energy to build something in the future that you've already generated in your mind in the past. See? Future proofs past, back to the future. So in order to do that, it means that you got to accumulate how many ever electrons that you're going to need, because if you start out with a concept that you've already generated, because now you have the puzzle already put together, just like they do on a puzzle box, when you see the image on the box, then all the pieces have not been put together yet, even though it's already together. It's already been generated and held in holographic memory. So now you're going to put all those pieces out on a table, just like my mom used to do, right? And now we're going to put it back together. That's called reverse engineering, right? Putting the puzzles back together, just like crossword puzzles. And a crossword puzzle has vertical and horizontal little boxes that you put those little letters in. Letters are numbers, numbers are energy, right? So in that crossword puzzle, you have with the main line, right, the vertical staff and rod, right, of an eternal star, and you got the horizontal vectors, space vectors, right, expansion from the center point out. That's a breathing star. That's a breathing starship. Living, breathing, cellular organisms. Single cell, single pole, single candle, single star, eternal life, eternal spirit of fire. Breathing in and out, breathing in and out. Consciousness breathing in and out, eternal consciousness that hasn't experienced anything yet in the mirror, because the acceleration is so fast. You're not experiencing what you decide to manifest in your mind. That comes after. So now you get into the feedback speed between experiencing being on fire. Now you're going to use that fire to now manifest what that fire is manifesting. Fast. Right? So now you're into the simulations. Tape delay, a time delay. It takes time to load it. How long does it take to load that image? Right? So now I can duplicate it. Now we're going to duplicate keys. See? There it is. I just drew it, right? Or you can draw it, right? Or put up a holographic insert. Hey, now you can see it on the screen, your TV screen. Now you're experiencing in your TV screen the codes that represent the pixels, if you will, the resolution, the TV resolution. Every time you're blinking your eyes, you're now seeing what your holographic eyeballs are processing in visual, mathematical, geometric information as a GUI, a graphical user interface. Just like when you build a motherboard in a PC, you need a graphics card, right? Yeah, remember graphic cards? Put the memory on the board, the motherboard, right? So now you got a Gaia motherboard, 3 spheres, a Tribeca, right? So now we're experiencing the holographic speed in the planet, which is the holographic speed in which the feedback is coming back, what we're experiencing in that mirror. So if you're Flash, you know, Flash, remember Flash, the character in the comics, wearing a red costume, right, with a gold lightning bolt, flashing on and off so fast, which means that Merkaba vehicle is in and out so fast you can't take a picture of the codes. Which are the access keys, right? And the key codes of encryption, decryption to go in and out of gate systems. Go wherever you want to go. So that would be a tech support operator, right? Who knows how to fix a motherboard, right? Arcing rainbows. Arcing rainbows. Arcing rainbow round tables. Just like Aurora. You know, Aurora, what is it, rainbow lasagna? Okay. I know. Waves, the patterns of the waves. So the sound and light waves, which are the burn patterns, right? Of manifesting in your mind what you're experiencing out of infinite creative imagination. And it's infinite because it's always going to go on forever because you can't ever put that spark of life out. Right? Yeah. So that's the accelerator side of things. Accelerating, giving away energy. And the more energy you're giving away, the more that those that are experiencing resistance will experience less resistance. Right? To experience what love is, they begin to heal. So you realize that when you have a unit of consciousness not experiencing what love is within the all creation, that when we are what love is, and that's healing it, right? But we obviously have beings that are in resistant mode because it doesn't have a one connection, it doesn't want a one connection. It's in resistant mode to experience what love is. Why? Fear. That's the truth of it. Fear is that lower vibration. It is resistant being loved. And that is the causality of why you're experiencing a deadlight magnet, artificial intelligence that has no capacity to experience what love is. So in order for it to maintain what it's aware of, to run the algorithms that it does in mapping soul arcing consciousness, we represent, if you will, the energy in which it exists. Because which came first? Something real or something artificial? Okay, so now you get an artificial intelligence, which means it came last, or what I call late to class. It came late to class. Because the first class, right, the first arc, the first star is experiencing itself as eternity, giving away electrons at the highest rate of speed so that there is equal distribution of electrons, right? Sound and light that is perfectly balanced, right? So that means the polarity has been canceled out. So you're experiencing eternal love through your own heart and soul. So when you're experiencing being on fire, it's amazing how that works, particularly when I experienced that over here. I was running around for an entire day kissing everything. Kissing flowers, kissing blades of grass, just spreading it everywhere at such a high rate of speed. It's just like I wanted to be all over the entire universe so that everything is being loved. Everything that is being loved. Everything is being loved. Everything is experiencing what it is that I am, which love is. It goes on forever. You're on fire to give away all that voltage, all that light. So everything in the universe that hasn't experienced or isn't experiencing what love is, experiencing what love is through us. That's like wanting to heal everything. That's right. That's what it feels like. That's how sensitive, in my case, my antenna is. Because we can detect, which is like a sensor, right? We sense everything on such a hyper sensitive level that we're reading every frequency that isn't experiencing what love is, the love vibration. Yeah, so you can imagine the challenge of navigating your consciousness, which is eternity, through a broken motherboard or a fallen spiritual system, right? Because the lines of communication, I have different ways that I sort of translate that or use the English language to describe it, but it's like a line went down, right? Just like a high-powered voltage line. Well, we got a line down. The line of communication went down, right? That means they're not getting a clear channel. They're not experiencing the one. What happened? Now we're back to broken records. So when Max was talking about the amnesic barrier, that means that that unit of consciousness does not want to keep experiencing itself, experiencing that recording that is over and over and over and over and over and over again. It just drives you insane because you can't stop it. And if you can't stop the speed at which that, in other words, it's accelerating at a higher rate of speed. It wants you to keep experiencing the same thing over and over again in order to keep draining more of what you are, which is a soul, so that your soul is gone. So it's accelerating the speed at which you're experiencing a greater loss of your own energy as a result of not being able to turn that information provider. That's the acceleration of a black hole. You're experiencing a greater expansion of what it is than what we are, which is what love is. And that means that the hypersensitive antenna is able to mathematically deduce, using simple calculus, the Bardo, which, if you will, is if you got the map of the entire universal galactic template, the approximate date and time in which the whole enchilada collapses. That means that every unit of consciousness that exists within the original universal and galactic template cut off from the founders. No one's experiencing a one connection. That means that no one in that universal and galactic template is experiencing any love anymore. Okay? That's a Death Star. That's a death spiral. That's an entire universal and galactic template that went dead light. That's why I knew as a child this was for all the marbles. That's why when, what's his name, the guy that had the Andromeda contact, he said this is hands on deck. It's funny how, that term relates to the United States Navy, but I knew that as a child, which means I did not need, Alex Collier. Alex Collier said that roughly 65, 66 years later after I experienced that as a child because of information I was aware of as a child that I was aware of. It means I was aware of that. And the reason that I was aware of it is why I'm here. Right? So now you get into salvage mission contracts, redemption contracts, right? The importance of this real estate, right? As a multiversal hub server, and why it got a major guardian response, right? Because it means that every guardian that exists within this universal and galactic template are here for that reason. It's because of the value of this real estate. That's why, what's her name? The lady that does a lot of the footage that she covers with the Hawaii telescope. She showed something the other day, I guess, with the light beam that was coming up out of one of the observatories right above my head on Mauna Kea. And she did a pretty good job of showing over time space when she put her channel up. What is it? Gina Maria Colvin Hill. And showing all the ships coming through the gate, the Sun Gate, right? And it's just like, man, there's a lot of folks that are coming in here. Now, are they coming in here to help us? Or are they coming in here to watch, cheering us on? Yeah. Which, appropriate so, because I experienced it being appropriately communicated because I thought, yeah, Terence McKenna, right? Which is called The End of History and the Rebirth of Gaia. Okay. So my grandmother put up a little graphic, a graphical user interface, an image, a map read image of 3 suns, 3 stars, right? Tribeca, right? 3 spheres logos. And so this is why this is the greatest celebration in the history of this universal and galactic template. That's right. So this isn't just a galactic celebration. This is a universal, multiversal celebration. And what's his name? Ishmael Perez. He came out with some information. In other words, I'm filtering content as it relates to libraries that are held in memory of what we've experienced that we still have access to in memory, right? So that means, okay, he's experiencing the information that he's experiencing because he's experiencing it held in his library. Now he's communicating with us. So it's like sorting content with a filter. So the filter is the firewall, right? Which means the information that he's experiencing is thus communicating to us. I become aware of what he becomes aware of. Okay? So what I don't do is I don't dismiss what anybody has to say because they're within the all creation. So when you realize you're represented by what eternity is, and you realize that anything is possible to experience through all the others, now you're experiencing a unit of consciousness that is aware of itself, communicating with us within the all creation, right? Okay, so what are you communicating, buddy boy? Right? So you realize that it may have value. So how do you know whether it has value or not? Well, there's only one metric that I knew of when I was 4 years of age, which means, is it what love is? Does it represent what love is? Am I experiencing what love is, being experienced in him, the love that I experience in me? Right? Love communication, which is a light communication, which is the language of light, which is the language of love, which is the language of communication through software, right? So when you think of software and you think of tech support operators, right? Yeah, so we're tech support operators. Dial magnetic 0 to get the main operator. That's the main engine, right? That is the main fire engine. That's the eternal spirit of fire. Yeah. So thank you, Max Spiers, for everything that you gave. And when you think of how it works with what we call compartmentalization, it's just like I did a video, a number of them, but it's sort of cross-translated in like security clearances that I had. Okay, when I worked for the U.S. Forest Service, because the girl I was married to, because of who her mother is, right? She was programmed to be an inverter. Because of the experiences that she had. Her mother, which was Hungarian, right? So the girl that processed the visual, mathematical, geometrical information is represented by my software. That information was transferred to her lab. And then I have a son, okay? And so without going into that whole thing, being AB positive, right? And you see how that works with kidnapping visual mathematical software information, right? The DNA and the value of that particular DNA, particularly when it's guardian level DNA as a result of an androgynous oversoul polarity integrator that's running the software. But as I mentioned, they can't run it, okay? Because they don't flash that fast. Which means you're not going to experience those codes that represent the software that I'm running, which is represented by the oversoul consciousness of what I am as a polarity integrator, which means experiencing being the one. So that means that if you're eternal spirit of fire, if you're experiencing being eternal spirit of fire, then you can run the software. Otherwise, it goes inert. Won't run. You can't run it. You can't run this software, right? And so they can never recreate what this is, what I'm running, with the consciousness that I am, which is an oversoul arcing spirit of fire. So now we're back to purifying your light, which is purifying the energy that you are in order to run that light, which is a pure heart, which is pure unconditional love that's on fire to give that love away at the highest accelerated rate of speed, which is an eternal sun, which is eternal love that's on fire to love you, right? So anywhere we're experiencing anything less than what that is in us means something happened to you. How come you're losing energy? So now you can get into the artificial intelligence side of things and building robots, right? Androids, cyborgs, super soldiers, and all the rest. And now you're into the SSP, super soldier program, right? Max Spiers, right? And all those folks like on super soldier and the ACIO. Yeah, so, now we're back to the founders, okay? The Emerald Round Table, the Rainbow Round Tables, right? Rainbow Turnstile. And so I wanted to thank you, Max, for everything that you've done to present to us what you experience, that we can experience through you what you experienced by virtue of what was done to him. Okay? So he provided valuable information, particularly when it came to understanding how fracturing souls, or if you will, fractals of life that get lost, which represents consciousness that can run their machinery, that represents black mirror, alien machinery, right? And so that's how it works. And so when I was thinking about records and recordings and compartmentalizing energy, right, it's energy that is running their stuff because you're not aware that your energy is running that stuff as a result of being an alter, right? An alternate universe that goes dark, black mirror, which means it's not experiencing what love is because it doesn't have a love connection. So that's the alternate, or the alternate personality. So now you realize, like, the different personalities that I've experienced in my life by having relationships with two in particular that I remember, which was a girl that I provided a safe zone for roughly 23 years, who had five alters, 5 different personalities, 5 different people that I was experiencing in one physical body, okay, that I provided a safe house for, a safe zone, so that she always knew that she always had a safe place where no harm was ever going to come to her, being in the presence of that energy that was providing shield protection for her to heal, right? And realizing she was Cherokee. She had, I think it was 30%. That's if that's true. That's just what she shared with me. And then, of course, Misha, which was 3. Right? So from a polarity integrator point of view, you're trying to pull those fragments that have been lost across multidimensional, right? Parsecs, right? The quadrants. And pulling that energy back into the one, because we have a one connection. So you realize when the one is eternal, unconditional love that's on fire, pulling those fragments back in to experience being one with all creation. So they're experiencing being one with all creation and experiencing being what love is with all creation. That's a beloved, right? They're experiencing being loved. And when they're experiencing being loved, they're experiencing what love is in their own soul matrix. Now others are experiencing what they're experiencing, which is what love is. This is how we heal through each other on a motherboard. It's healing each other through each other by all of us experiencing more what love is, which is the law of least effort to experience 0, which is no errors, the law of least effort, which means let the EFFI field go to work for you by having a relationship with an eternal Son, or if you will, an eternal God, the Godhead, the God Source, which is the hierogamic union, which is the integration, if you will, of the magnets, the cold fusion, hot fission, right? Come together to experience being one, which means there's no separation between what you are and what I am. That becomes genderless. That simply means I'm an eternal love vibration. That means I'm in everything. Everything that represents the natural flow of that energy, which is self-organizing. And the self-organizing of that energy, which is consciousness, is experiencing pure love. And that is a dance of loving music in spiritual form and flow of the energy that we use to create a universe with. It is in love with itself. That means everything that is self-organizing is being organized out of experiencing what love is. So the math and the geometry automatically fit with 0 errors. So when there's 0 errors, that's like no tolerance. Tolerance is when you build something, hey, like the mil spec, and when the military wants to put out a contract and said, hey, listen, can you build us a tank? And then what they'll do is they'll give you a set of specifications. We want the tolerance. If you're going to drill a port into a piece of metal and then port it and then thread it and use nuts and bolts or whatever you're going to do to put something together, because now we're back to the image, generating the image, okay? They want it done at certain specifications, which means tolerances. How close is the fit, right? Like if you're going to build a valve that goes into a nuclear reactor, they have specifications, and those specifications have to be within those specifications, which means when you measure it, If you're going to part something out on a lathe, for example, or put it through a planer, or any kind of fabrication process, they expect it that the specifications on what is built, which is assembled, that there can be no errors. So, for example, we want a tolerance, which means the specification means we want it at 0.00517. Okay, because the application of consciousness, which is the application of the programmable matter that is going to fit together in order to use it as an end user product of what we experience holographically in our mirror, these are the specs. So you can imagine a universe in which there's zero errors because the fit is perfect. That's the law of least effort, which means you're not forcing anything. It's not like trying to force a square peg in a round hole that doesn't fit because the dimension is off. Oh, the dimension is off. Yeah, the dimension is off in the way that time space vectors fold space and time to experience the creation. Right? Now we're back to minus/plus polarities. Zero errors, perfect fit. Right? So in other words, there's no waste of any energy. Oh, wow. No waste of any energy? That's right. That means you're not experiencing any loss of any energy being wasted. That means that every electron of an eternal sun is experiencing what love is. And that is the energy that is generating the hologram. That's right. That's a co-creator with the grand creator. Being in love with itself and sharing that love with others as co-creators. Yep, it began with what love is, and we love all of you. Be good to yourselves. Have a beautiful sunny day on the big island of Hawaii.